Good morning, everyone. It is really exciting to see so many people here today. Our classes, faculty, our senior leadership, and the local community coming to join us today for this very important Kalikow Presidential Fellows panel.
You gotta go around.
First year of responding to Presidency. My name is Meena Bose. I am the director of the Peter S. Kalikow Center for the Study of the American Presidency and the executive dean for the Public Policy and Hofstra Service Program, both of which in Peter S. Kalikow School of Government, Public Policy, and International Affairs. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you here today for our panel with our Kalikow Senior Presidential Fellows, Ari Fleischer and Schiliro. My introductions are going to be very brief, and I will just ask my colleagues as a courtesy, Provost Reardon, HCLAS Dean Badalska, our associate deans from the Larson Sciences, Dean Weingartner, Dean Robinson from the Oregon Honors College, many faculty in political science who are here today, and philosophy and other Kalikow school departments. It is wonderful to have all of you here today. I could just also thank professors who have brought their classes today. Professor Amy Bair's Philosophy of Law class is here. Professor Richard Kumelfar's Legislative Politics class is here. Professor Fritz's International Politics class is here. And Professor Parati's American Politics class is here, in addition to many students from my seminar on race, gender, and presidency, numerous other classes and programs, and of course, our wonderful university guests. We're truly delighted, and I do think we are getting everyone seated, which is perfect. Special thanks, let me say it now, because the time will go by so fast, to the Hofstra Cultural Center, particularly at Green Commons, Amy Trotta, Janine Rose Bernaldi, and Errol Allison, for making this seem so easy when it went on. Let me begin by, the introductions could take 10 minutes, but I'm giving myself 3. We are very fortunate. The purpose of the Kalikow Senior Presidential Fellows Program is to bring practitioners with direct expertise in White House policymaking to campus to share their perspectives with those of us who study politics and public policy. And Peter Kalikow, construct class of 1965, this was his original vision for the program, which started in 2009, was also to bring bipartisan perspectives. So senior White House officials from the Republican and the Democratic political party. This is our second iteration of the Senior Presidential Fellows Program, and we are truly honored to have Ari Fleischer and Phil Schiliro with us today, and as a part of this Fellows Program since the fall of 2021. Let me be brief in my introductions. Both Ari and Phil have extensive experience both working in the White House and with the White House on Capitol Hill. I'll go alphabetically. Ari Fleischer, it was White House Press Secretary in the George W. Bush presidency from 2001 to 2003. He previously worked in the 2000 presidential campaign for the Bush-Cheney campaign, and before that, actually worked over Elizabeth Dole's presidential campaign earlier in that election cycle. Before working in the White House, Ari was the press secretary on Capitol Hill, and worked in a number of positions for, I think he's 17 years. 3 members of the House and 1 senator. So extensive experience in working on both chambers of Congress. I understand there will be there will be, I don't think there will be breaking news during on the panel, but we're not today, so what they said. So they'll get to offer their perspective. Mr. Fleischer currently is the head of Ari Fleischer Communications, which focuses on corporate and sports communications on handling the media. No easy time. As a colleague said the other day, Ari is always on message, and we appreciate his sharing his both political analysis and the communication of that amount. All right, it's wonderful to have you in that. Mr. Phil Schiliro served as Director of Legislative Affairs and Special Advisor to the President in the Barack Obama administration. He was responsible for he was the legislative liaison for enacting the Affordable Care Act in 2009 until the law was enacted in 2010, and then served as special advisor to President Obama on the Affordable Care Act and health policy in 2011, and then again in 2013 and 2014. Before his White House career, Mr. Schiliro worked on Capitol Hill for several years, and was particularly active in healthcare legislation and environmental policy legislation. Mr. Schiliro currently directs co-founded and also two nonprofits, Co-Equal, an organization, a policy organization in DC, and that focuses on bipartisan policy analysis, and Grow New Mexico, a little organization where he now resides. I'd say the best part of his bio for Glass. He is a Hofstra graduate, class of 1978, political science, recognizing my former Harvard chair, Dr. Newman, my current chair, Dr. Fritz here. We are truly delighted that Mr. Schiliro has taken the time to come back to Hofstra to share how his political journey started here and shaped the passage of major legislation and policy discussion both on Capitol Hill and the White House. So Phil, it is wonderful to welcome you back. Please join me in welcoming our speaker. We are going to take the first 20 minutes or so. I have 10 questions for our speakers. Actually, I added 11. But I'm restricting myself to about the first 20 minutes or so for us to converse, raise a few topics. There's a lot in the news about presidential policymaking today. I did not think there would be so packed, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I think we'll have microphones for that. We will try to encourage students to ask questions first, particularly from our classes, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for conversation. So with that, let me begin. I was over here in the stone and to dance. Okay, what's looking now? So Ari, Bill, I sent you questions on Sunday evening, and thinking that I wanted to be prepared. And of course, a few hours later, I was updated, dated in my questions with the announcement that 8 Democratic senators would vote to end the filibuster, which of course would lead to the Senate passing legislation to reopen the government, which now the House will reschedule. The members, apparently, there is a member of Congress from Wisconsin that says he's Friday to do it. To get to DC in time. I don't know if that's choice or not. I read it.
It's true.
Okay. So
He's a Republican, of course.
The reports are that with the last I saw, looking at my phone now, is that the House will convene at 4 p.m. I believe they are scheduled to. The Super Nonson will swear in the newest member of the House. He was elected in the special election from New Mexico, and the vote. I'm sorry, from Arizona, right? And that the House vote will take place later today, and the president said he'll be signing this evening. So we spoke last week. Or said that he will be signing soon, about the path forward for ending the government shutdown. And I had kind of 2 questions prepared. Well, a comment came up in our conversation about what would be sufficient pain to prompt that. And I wonder if both of you would speak for a few minutes on why this shutdown appears to be en route to concluding now. We had discussed possibly a 2-week window before Thanksgiving. It's crossed 6 weeks now, so which after the first launched a shutdown in American history. The previous one was in the first Trump administration, 2018 to 2019, December 2018 to January 2019. What I think brought, the 8 Democratic senators to decide to end the filibuster? I'll let you decide, myself, or...
But first of all, thank you to everybody who's gathered. This is a great crowd. Thank you for all of you for showing up, all the students, people who live here, and listen to this college that makes it possible. Thank you to all of you. And Peter Kalikow. Peter's a wonderful man, and I'm very grateful to be able to be part of this program.
And if I'm in say, was going to join us, but had us actually viewing the recording afterwards. That do you know how to say?
You know, I think it's really interesting when you look at this. I don't think it was political yet, because one of the most important reports that came out of the news is that these Democratic senators were willing to do this 2 weeks into the shutdown. But they were advised, no, let's let this go longer. Let's go through the election. I don't think this was about political pain, but this was about politics. And so it wasn't about SNAP spending. It wasn't about the FAA, although it started to put a lot of pressure on people. But a lot of the Democrats thought this was their advantage, and so therefore they prolonged it. Republicans were going to stand there, and I don't know that they thought it was to their advantage. I'll tell you this, even through a number of shutdowns in my time on the Hill and in the White House. Shutdowns are a loser for everybody. Nobody gains politically out of a shutdown. Democrats were going to win New York City, they were going to win Virginia, they were going to win New Jersey, regardless of the shutdown. I've seen coverage saying that the shutdown impacted the vote in New Jersey and Virginia, like even in the northern suburbs of Virginia, where there are a lot of federal employees. Nonsense. What affected those people's votes was Doge. They already hated Donald Trump. They didn't need a shutdown to vote against Donald Trump. They had every good reason to vote against Trump because Trump's getting rid of their jobs as part of his effort to decide with Donald. So yeah, what's the shutdown? I'm delighted that these senators broke. It was bipartisan from the beginning. You always had 3 Democratic senators voting with 52 Republicans to keep the government open. And now we got an additional 5 Democrats joining with Republicans. What does bother me is an era where a lot of people say we need more senators. We need to stop the polarization of the 2 parties. Here you have 8 Democrats join with Republicans. And what happens? Those Democrats getting Hillary by their party. Hillary by the leader of the House Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries. What is the advantage and the incentive to defeat a moderate to give things that are bipartisan over something completely sensible and open the government if you get pounded for it? Chuck Schumer, a Democrat leader who voted against opening the government, is getting pounded by the Democratic base. So it's a real troublesome sign for the future of bipartisanship when this is the greeting that bipartisan senators on the Democratic side get by their Democratic colleagues, friends, who are pounding them for joining Republicans. One last substantive note on this. The whole notion that this has been about protecting poor people so their health care premiums don't spike. Absolutely utter nonsense. That is not the reality of what this vote was. And let me explain why. The people who are in poverty, their health care premiums are going to go from $0 to $0 on what was granted. No changes whatsoever in health care premium payments by those in poverty. They could just above poverty. Your family of 4 making $32,000 a year. Because massive subsidization that exists for taxpayers that more middle-class taxpayers pay the people who are lower middle class, your premiums previously $0. And under this agreement that the Democrats fought tooth and nail against on the basis of health care, those premiums are now $56 a month. What? $56 a month. Most people in America pay more than $8,000 a month. It is already and still will be massively subsidized. And what about if you make twice the poverty level, $64,000 a year? Your premiums were $170 a month. Massive subsidy. Now they're going to make $354 a month. Still a massive subsidy. Who can get health insurance premiums for $354 a month? Nobody. It still is a massive subsidy. Yes, it went up. But what did it go up from to? It went up from ridiculously cheap to extraordinarily cheap. Now let's say you make 300% of poverty. You're a family that makes almost $100,000 a year. You too get subsidized care. It goes from $482 a month if you previously spent to $801 a month. It doubled. So press screams, premiums are doubling, tripling, then catastrophic. The company always have to ask yourself, when you're reading about these things, what did it go from, and what is it now? A sip. Like $100,000 a year, $800 for insurance, you're still getting a discount compared to most middle class people that are not on the federal program. So that's what this was all about. I don't think there's anything objectionable. Ask people to pay $56 a month for the healthcare premiums, but so many else in society pay more. And again, if you're in poverty, it is zero. None of this changed for how much you got then. So that's what the fight was about when it came to healthcare premiums. That's why the government shut down. That's what the Democrats were saying had to get us tribally into law. And those extra subsidies were COVID-era subsidies that were always supposed to be temporary. Democrats wanted to make hiring it and use leverage shutting down the government and kept cutting that. That's why the government shut down. And I'm grateful to those 8 senators for acting bipartisan and opening the government back up. And
they saw it.
I want to start where I did agreeing with Ari, and that is thanking all of you. That's not really share a lot about democracy. So the fact, I know some of these facts are leaders, right? Yeah, I'm listening. You know, they are actually privileged to tell the tough things. The fact that you're here means a lot. And for people and theater and keep talking about people you have,
Yeah, Lord.
but I also have other things to do. No, the fact that you're here really be a spot because this is the light to it. I was studying this like this.
Nice.
So thank you, all of you. It's guys to us, and thank you. I mean, as for the just that chat, poser, other fucking professors, even the years, all of them. I do. I think that's your complete answer. That's when Ari and I do these. Really didn't try to fight Thomas Brown. And why these alliances too. And this why I can't agree with a single. In fact, I think they could use it to fight something.
Not the
When's Chen? Well, about general.
yeah, and here I do. Land is it. Here the way I'll forget that it once and I think before.
Okay, I'm getting closer. Okay, is that better?
Yeah, please.
First of all, Ari, I don't look at this political. I look at this as a fight with values. Yeah, not one. Part of it, you can't look at things in isolation and say, what happened 3 months ago? Republicans passed you in a partisan mode, strickling partisan. Their big tax bills, it just had more $1 trillion of our national debt. That would for and you know, but what tax is that bill? Tax cuts for the very rich. They have the corporations from the funnies. They were temporary tax cuts. They would be honey because that was the criteria. In this fight, Democrats said these tax cuts for middle-class families are expired. Healthcare. They should be made part. The same way we treated corporations, and Elon Musk is very rich. And it should be no different just because you're an average American and you can't afford products. That's what this fight was. It was values. Democrats tried to negotiate with President Trump and the leaders of the Republican Party. They refused. Repeatedly, they asked the president to sit down to them. Repeatedly, they asked the speaker and majority to sit down and find common ground, and they won't do it. Now, you have to look at the overall side section. Healthcare prices were going to go up for families. They were also saying their loans, schools go up because that educational loans are going up. His price. Basic things that you buy at the food store are going up because of tariffs. The squeeze for middle class fan, look at, worse. So Ari had some statistics that are, I will say they were accurate on the population increase. But let's look at a couple that are 62 years old, okay, and we're relying on the marketplace for health insurance. And they've got a couple of kids in college, and their student loans are going up because of the changes in administration rates. That couple is going to see a $2,000 increase in healthcare premiums per month if it's not extended. That's $2,000 a month to children people who are working really hard in long last They're making maybe $120,000. They're not Elon Musk rich, right? They're getting by, but down the range in a Skype. That's for Democrats what this fight was about. The cost of not even health care, but the cost of living general. I think what really is trying to make a difference, and let's take a step back. Democrats, the legal government, they don't like to close the government. That's not their first choice. There are some Republicans who believe in government a lot, and they don't mind that the government is closed down so much. Democrats believe in it and want it to be open. So this is a last resort for a lot of Democrats. They were willing to do that, to go along with some of the folks Army said and others. They feel that maybe we can get something, maybe we can get a solution. Up to the end of negotiate. As Speaker Johnson said repeatedly, there's nothing to negotiate about. That's not how government works. You sit down the room, you fight complaint. Faced with that, and I think the deciding thing, this we probably disagree a lot, was the food cuts. I don't like to say acronyms, but the SNAP cuts. Sure, were Democratic senators and some House members, they don't like the idea generally, and they could see the pain being inflicted on people. That made a difference, and it's not worth it. Because you can't put food in a child's mouth a week later when they didn't have food. They can't go back in time to do that. So, given that there was no indication that there was going green, let alone an association, I think the critical mass enough said, okay, we have to reopen the government. And I don't know this is a fact. That's just my supposition. There were more than there were probably 14 or 16 who said it's time, let's reopen it. We're going to have this fight again in January, right? But let's at least let kids get food. Let's be active. And I think that's what we're going to.
Let me ask a quick follow-up. We have a lot of topics to just address, but the Affordable Care Act was what drove this shutdown plan. And Senate Majority Leader Don Thurman has said he will allow the Senate to vote on extending subsidies for a year in December. There's no obligation for the House to do that. It seems unlikely, so we'll see what that brings. But I guess the quick follow-up for both of you would be, do you think that this issue, that the question of the extended, the additional enhanced subsidy from 2020 and 2021, 22 actually, will lead to another shutdown at the end of January, because that's what the third bill calls for? And will this be an issue in the midterm elections as we start to see the effects of not having the subsidies for people with varying incomes in individual marketplace across the
You're being asked about three different questions there. So I try to make them. I'll try to go through it quick. For that good one. Anybody ever remember this cartoon Popeye?
Yeah.
Do you remember what what his catchphrase was? And I'll tell you more.
Or Matt Tuesday.
Did they say flattery?
I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for us. We're going to thank you for the rest day.
The thing that naturally epitomized the agreement on the health care system. So guarantee that the House will ever vote on it, either the Senate did or it will pass. It's a hope that it'll come. So I'm hopeful because I think it's an important issue, but I don't have a lot of confidence on it. And again, you have to compare it to the game being the 14 people right now. In terms of impact later on, 9 months from now, 10 months, 12 months, but I don't, things are too fluid. They change so quickly. I don't really think it's going to be a significant issue then. Then you had one party discussion.
The January survey, the Dems would matter in the, when we talked about something of that, whether this would Trump. I know.
I think what's probably going to happen between now and then is what happened in the past, and for a variety of reasons, the Republican majority didn't do it now. But they'll probably start segregating out individual parts of the government and having votes on that to open. And so when you get to January 30th, they may not have comprehensive code, but a lot of the government in full funds. That's the way they did in this, but
With agriculture, military, right? It's you.
and Larry, let us say like our choice. So they did those. I think that's probably way too.
Couple points. One, so Phil and I really did agree on that first answer. Because as Phil acknowledged, this is about people who make about $120,000, $130,000 a year. And that's the biggest question people need to ask themselves. Should the government be subsidizing health care for people who make that much money or not? And this is a big philosophical divide in our country. I think there are many Democrats who get hard at believe the answer is yes. Actually, everybody in society should have free health care. That's why this debate is so much. This the counter-to attempt. Cameron's nose on at. The debate really comes down to if we subsidize people who are middle income and upper middle income. And by the way, Long Island, New York City area, that's a middle income salary. In much of America, you're wealthy if you're making $130,000 a year. Much of America. So the debate comes down to, should we be subsidizing people who make that much money so they can pay virtually very, very low premiums? And therefore, the only people left on private insurance are the wealthier. And therefore, private insurance is going to inevitably wither on the vine because not enough people be on it. That's what this ultimately is all about. It is Democrat belief, good-hearted belief, that we should have free health care for all and there should be no private insurance. That's where this goes when you start the debate. That should people making $120,000 pesos, not right. I'm against that. But I'm also against using government shutdown as the leverage to get anything done. It's a loser for everybody. I urge people, not only people who are going to get their food benefits, SNAP, but when you shut the government down, you shut the government down. And there are consequences to stopping the government from funding the things an open government would fund. So if you shut it down, you get leverage over health care, you are hurting people who have to rely on the government. It's a choice you make by using shutdown as leverage. So I hope the Democrats won't do it again when it comes due. When this temporary agreement comes end in January, we're going to be in the same fight. The way to deal with it is if you have the votes, you have the votes. Then you pass the subsidies on top of the subsidies. You make the temporary subsidies permanent subsidies. If the Democrats and the minority in the House, the minority in the Senate, and without the White House, have the votes and have presidential signature that they can get it done, do it. If you don't have the votes in the House, don't have the votes in the Senate, and don't have a signature, White House, do you shut the government down again? Do you shut it down over your second priority and your third priority, your fourth priority? I sure hope not. And then do you pillory the 8 people who were willing to be bipartisan? That's also where this goes in January. Did the Democrats now make it poison for fellow Democrats to act bipartisan? Or did they create an environment where the two parties actually can get something done? So I think what's ultimately going to happen is there'll be a vote in the Senate, the vote will fail to make the speech permanent. It won't even be taken up in the House. And then the Democrats have to make this decision again by January 31st about do they shut the government down again to once again use leverage to get done with it and not have the votes for it.
Well, let's actually keep this topic and focus on the philosophical questions to the two parties. Because of the recent local elections in Long Island, Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, it's difficult to tell what the lessons are for 2026 and looking far ahead to 2028. We saw in the past year, right, in just over 12 months, Donald Trump won re-election consecutively, only other president since Grover Cleveland to do that, on a MAGA platform. Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill won the gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey, respectively, on largely centrist Democratic platforms. And Zoran Mamdani, who a year ago, I believe, had announced his mayoral campaign in New York City and was polling at, initially under 1%, right? Just won the New York City mayoral race and won the primary in June, which was ranked choice voting, It was officially announced a few days later, but on election night, his major opponent, ex-Cuomo, conceded because he was so far ahead. And that was on a Democratic Socialist platform. So what do these elections, and then on Long Island, just sorry for that context here, if you look at most of the local races in Nassau and Suffolk County, there were many districts stayed red, districts that were blue stayed blue. There were very few flips. There's a very interesting supervisor race that is being counted. There's a margin of 21 ballots. And my student who asked us last year, I believe the total number of people who voted was about 7,000. So it was small, right? But every vote counts here. But so what lessons do we take from Long Island, New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, the presidential race in 2024, about constituencies and policy platforms for the Democrats and the Republicans?
I think the lesson is that both parties are in a state of tremendous flux right now. Our politics is moving and shifting faster and on thinner ice than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. Donald Trump changed the Republican Party by changing it from establishment, experience, George W. Bush party to a populist party. He did that in large part because of the war in Iraq. Changed Republican policies, I have to admit this, about American adventurism, that nation building abroad, and the importance on America first. He changed the party as a result of that. Changed the party by making it a more blue-collar working class party. Less country club Republican. Country club Republicans are now country club Democrats. Two parties, I talked about this last year. Two parties have changed faces. Republicans, my whole career, party, college graduates, and upper end of the weekend. Democrats, party, working class people, lower income. Like, it has let Democrats now overwhelm college graduates, postgraduate degrees. Donald Trump in 2024 running against Kamala Harris. Here it's Donald Trump running in 2020 against Joe Biden. Donald Trump improved among blacks, among Hispanics, among the low-income people, among suburban voters, among virtually every demographic you can think of. Trump 24 did better than Trump 2020. Except one group, Kamala Harris in 24 did better than Joe Biden in 2020. People who make more than $100,000 a year. The wealthier voter increased voted for Kamala Harris and against Donald Trump. So the consequence of this is the Democratic voter base now, upper income, college graduate, is much more reliable to come to the polls in off-year elections. College graduates show it more than lower income high school graduates. It's always been true. It's one of the reasons Republicans previously had the advantage in midterm elections because their college graduates would show up. But Republicans were at a disadvantage if there was a massive turnout in a presidential election year. Now that's split. The Republicans, to be successful, which Trump was in 2024, they need huge turnouts. Trump on the ballot, they had huge turnout. In part because Trump inspires the MAGA base to come out, and in part because Trump inspires the anti-Trump base to come out. Huge turnout. When Trump's name was not on the ballot, you get huge turnout by those who don't like Trump and by college graduates. That's the new dynamic of our elections. The Democrats are in flux because they really have an ideological fight underway. And it's really a question of how woke, how progressive, how socialist can you be and still win your election. Democrats have a age fight underway. Everybody loves their grandparents, but I think a lot of people don't want their grandparents to work in the Senate anymore. Be senators. So there's a real primary problem Democrats have, as a lot of younger voters, including socialist candidates in New York, are primarying long-term, long-standing Democrats, incumbents. That's what I mean about the two parties getting in flux. Populism on the Republican side and creeping progressivism, socialism, and younger voters putting pressure on incumbent Democrats on the Democratic side. Flux.
Do you make sense?
I don't know the answer. Okay? I can only tell you that there's a lot of fluidity in American politics. So I want to do this part quick, and then I want to talk about something else. What this election means is a lot about. But first thing to remember is off-year elections, midterm elections, usually are a reaction to what happened. One of my markers that I always look at is the 1946 election. And I don't think there's anybody here who probably voted 46 election, but I don't know, it's not so challenging. I say that because the war in 1945 was a great time in America. Life, victory, and raids. There's a really good feeling. We defeated it. It was terrific. And people came back to their families, and rationing was tapering off. It was just a really good time. And the Democratic president, the Democratic Congress, and in 1946, the Democratic Congress got obliterated. They lost dozens of seats in the House. I think they lost a dozen seats in the Senate. And there are a lot of factors for that. Part of it is people like something new after Obama, and there's been Democratic control for a while. Also, like, look under the hood. A lot of those service members coming back would have a nice image of it. A lot of them got divorced because they had family problems when they came back. A lot of the things people wanted, like a washing machine, people were disgruntled. Some of the prices went up. It affected it. 2 years later, 1948, Democrats got all those seats back and more. I can't draw a lesson on American politics from just that snapshot. I do see it happen time and time again where you have the volatility. So I don't think it's unique to now. I think in this election, it's a variety of factors. And I asked the Popeye question before. This is a hard question for folks, but you shout out the answer if you know. What is the biggest deficit reduction bill in this century? Anybody? Biggest deficit reduction bill, close to $2 trillion. Bill Clinton? No. He left in 2000. The Affordable Care Act. Not only do you not know that, no Democrats in the House or Senate really pay much attention to it, but the Congressional Budget Office does, because they have to do these reports every year, and they track deficit reduction. The Affordable Care Act somehow extended insurance to 50 million people, and at the same time lowered health care costs enough to reduce the deficit. Now, when we talk about lowering health care costs, it's all relative. Your costs may still be going up, but going up less than what was projected 15 years ago. That runs into trillions of dollars. So, on a very basic level, okay, there's a law that Americans have come to rely on. Again, keep in mind, most people don't get insurance through the EC marketplace, right? They have employer insurance, but hasn't changed. We're just talking about people who get it on the marketplace, who are not Medicaid. That tends to be middle-class Americans who are struggling to get by, just the way I said before. Because of tariffs, their costs are going up. Because of some other policies, their costs are going up because of squeeze. Now, why do I say that in the context of selection? I don't think the average person might even articulate it, right? But I think they feel it of what's going on. They see a president right now, and I think of it as the three Ps. Anybody goes to D.C. these days, and you go by a government building, you see a giant banner of Donald Trump. It's never happened before. The banners on government buildings. That's one B. The second B is the bathroom. He's very happy showing pictures of this beautiful bathroom. The third B is the ballroom, where the East Wing gets demolished, and there's going to be a magnificent ballroom that was going to be $200 million, and now it's itching up from $400 million. They see the president going around the world asking for a Nobel Peace Prize. There's a stadium in Washington that's going to be built, and he wants his name on the stadium. That's what his focus is. At the same time, families around the country are seeing their costs going up. And I think on some level, whether it's just subconscious, subliminal, we're saying, wait a second. I voted for him because he said it was about me and lowering my costs. He didn't say it was about a bathroom with this fancy novel. He didn't say he was going to blow up the East Wing. In fact, he said he wasn't going to touch the East Wing. And he blew it up to build this ballroom. He can't say he's putting up these banners. He didn't tell me last year he wants the Treasury to mint a coin next year with his face on both sides of the coin. It kind of seems like he's thinking about himself a little bit. And me, and now my health insurance is going to go up by $2,000 a month. And I need that health insurance because my employer doesn't offer. Work for a small business. Sure, me and my wife are getting by. But we don't have enough to pay $2,000 more a month. As I said before, now I can't get the low-cost loan, so I can put my kids through Hofstra. That, I think, in this election, had an effect. Whether people can express everything I just said or not, and I could be 100% wrong, right? This could have been about the weather in campus, but that's what I think it's about. And then, what we don't know is, if I'm right, will that feeling extend to November of next year? Because they're going to be all intervening our hands. By next week, we might be in a war in Venezuela. We might be in a war in Nigeria. The president said guns blazing. He wants to send people there because he saw a segment on Fox. That's why it's so volatile. That's why when you ask good questions about what's going to happen and how this related, I can't really say. I could say the factors I see right now.
Thank you. And of course, go back from the lesson in the past, in 46, the Democrats did terribly. In 1948, President Harry Truman went to sleep thinking he had lost the election. And I know most students here have seen in several classes we teach the picture of President Truman holding up the newspaper headline, Dewey defeats Truman, which of course looked incorrect, thanks to polling that ended 3 weeks early. But let me, I'm going to defer to the audience to see if you want to ask any of the questions that I have in mind for immigration, tariffs, foreign policy, and social media, government administration, and I'm going to get to my individual questions for both of you. I will combine 2 questions into one, and then we'll open it up. 2026 and 2028. Are there special measures needed to ensure that the midterm election results are upheld, regardless of which political party wins control of either or both chambers of Congress? And along with that, so concerns about, I guess both of these questions are about legitimacy of elections and constitutionality of action. Are concerns that are being raised about a possible effort to have a third Trump presidential just? And how would the 22nd Amendment, ratified in 1951, which limited presidency to 2 terms after President Donald Roosevelt only elected 4 terms, how would the 22nd Amendment be enforced if there was a 2020 presidential campaign? So I know those are 3 questions. I stuck it together. But after that, I'll open it up.
All right, I'll go first on it. But first, I want to add one thing to reflect on what the bill said. We're not going to send our forces to Nigeria. That was Donald Trump's way of getting the world to focus on something. That is not just to be dismissed as a 7-o'clock box. The fact is that there is a radical Islamic terrorist group in Nigeria that has slaughtered tens of thousands of Christians. It is a travesty. It's a humanized horror, and it is about someone's religion. We would never want that to happen in the United States. Anywhere around the world, world attention should be what's happening to Christians in Nigeria. So I don't dismiss it. So as for the rest of it, Donald Trump is stepping down and will be done on January 20th, 2020. I hear these debates about will Trump really step down? Will it be over? Will he run for a 3rd term? He's trolling everybody. The more people take it seriously, the more he delights in it. Stop taking it seriously. Enjoy yourselves. Relax, go to sleep that night if you don't like him. And know somebody new will be there. And the reason why? Our Constitution is so much stronger than any one of the United States. It always has. It was on that terrible day, January 6th, when there was a riot at the Capitol and the tried to interfere with the counting of the votes. That same night, votes were counted. You know why? Because our Constitution is that strong. So yeah, Trump's term will be up on January 20th. I guess it's 2020 nothing. Then 2029, and he'll be a Trump president who cannot run, and will be done. As for the midterms, if there's any game to be played with the midterms, I'll sleep well on that one too, regardless of the results. I think there's precedent. Donald Trump was elected in 2016. In 2018, Republicans lost the House. Republicans lost the Senate. And life went on. Trump has said now that happened to me once. I won't let it happen again. I'll do something to upset the results. I think this, again, is the fear of Trump people inadvertently ask. And those results will be up to the people. If people decide Republicans keep the House, Republicans can keep the House. 50 states have to pass 50 different ways of tampering with an election. The federal government doesn't have authority or control over these elections. It's up to the states. So I'll sleep well knowing that whatever happens, those nights decided by the people will be decided by the people in the House. And he said that well now. Do I sleep well now? I sleep great now. Yeah, I do. And I didn't sleep so well when President Biden was in office, but I do sleep watching him laugh. So I'm not worried at all about those tinkering or tampering. Because generally I'm not worried about what happens after 4 years are up.
I think we have to limit this to one question because I can't remember the question. I think because like in 2026 is we'll just have to hear it 2025. I would be concerned in 2026 if the margin is very slight. One of the things that happened at all this area, you know what they were saying in New Jersey before the race was that the single-digit rates might be a point or two, right? That seemed like the Republican was surging, and it ended up being 13 points or so. So it's hard to say something was rate. One of them was 13 points. I looked at the New Jersey and thought it's now super majority. The biggest margin I think since Watergate was up. It's close. You can't say it, which was Kansas. Yeah. In the one I grew up here was House of Delegates in Virginia, right? Where the Republicans hoped they should control because Democrats only had 51. I think they ended up with 64. Just as recently, 10 years ago, they had 30% from these seats, right? So when you win by those margins, you're okay. I mean, one of my favorite election statistics right now is Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. I already since they longer that's a work to this, but they had about 480 contested elections in Allegheny County, so it was probably just 111. So that was football for 469 or 11. That's okay. So like that, same thing in Bucks County. So if you have that going on in 2026, then if we have a lot of races that are 100 vote margins, which we sometimes do. Remember, Republicans got back to the House in 1994 because of every race under 1,000 votes they won. And that's not in reactions. Dude, on the 22nd Amendment, I agree with Ari, and I disagree on what going back to what he said. Jerry, simply because he's the president of the United States. When the president of the United States says something that's on Nigeria, or when he was running last year, he said, elect me, you don't have to vote again. He has shown repeatedly if he says something, he does try to do it eventually. That's why it couldn't be dismissed when one of the strategists supposes to have Steve Bannon says we have a plan to do this. I don't know if he's telling the truth, but I do know when the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, says something, it is taking something. Now, the thing that I'm curious about in the 22nd Amendment is if they do have a secret plan, but if they unveil it, like, I don't think it's going to take that long for people on the Democratic side to say, well, wait a second, maybe Barack Obama could run again. Because if it's good for you, why can't Barack Obama do the same thing, whatever the loophole is, right? J.D. Vance will run for president, Donald Trump will be vice president, right? So George Clooney can run for president and just Barack can be vice president. So, we don't think those ways normally, but I could tell you on social media and other places, if this became a real thing, there'd be a draft Obama movement. I'm not sure they want that matchup, right? But maybe they do. Who knows?
I can't spend a lot of time thinking about it right now because it just seems crazy.
Well, it brings lots of volatility to it, to the unforeseen levels.
Anyone would be teaching with President Stress would be
Yeah.
President so happy to know you're worried about this.
Well, let's open this up for discussion. Are we putting the microphones out? Yeah. Please ask students to come forward, and let's try to keep the questions concise so that we have enough time to answer. So only one species just one part.
That's serious.
You'll follow my example. All right, run it later. Again,
Sorry, my name is Brian. My history, blocks, behaviors, political science minor. Personally, I just I'm trying to keep it concise, but I'm just very grateful for the staff, for both of our fellows here, Dr. Bose here, and just the opportunity as a student to be here. My question is more so for the phrase from Schiliro on more about values and not policy. And it's kind of an elevating in the room for some of us who saw it, not to use too much political language just give. But I got a New York Times notification. One of the first things I read this for. I went to my Hofstra computer shirt. You have access to New York Times. You fill up things that's made use of it. I'll just read the headline, and if I may get your thoughts on it, it says, breaking news, Jeffrey Epstein allegedly revealed that Trump knew his tongue. So, again, it's a longer article, but it's just that, just based on that headline, it's what you...
show us on that keep trying to show
Well, I saw it this morning too, and I showed it to Cliff. So what do you know of this bill? And then I looked at the story and it said the email was sent from Jeffrey.Epstein at underneath Rikers Island. I wondered, why he just sent this? Look, to me, there's only one issue here. And unless somebody has some evidence that Donald Trump did something inappropriate with underage kids. So and Bill Clinton apparently knew about Epstein, all these people allegedly. I don't know what they knew or didn't know. I would hope they said he's a swine and had nothing to do with the guy. Trump eventually did that and had a falling out with Epstein in 2004, 2005. If there were, the article did not say specifically what Trump allegedly knew. It didn't get into whether Bill Clinton allegedly knew anything about it either. So it was a tantalizing headline. He knew. Allegedly. But didn't say knew what. He knew about Epstein. And now we all know what that means about Epstein. But it was imprecise. So I don't defend Donald Trump on anything about this. We don't get first. But if Trump didn't have if Trump did not do anything in control room underage people, I think there's a lot less here than meets the eye. And that's the knowledge. If he did, I think everything that Stevenson said about him is beyond the pit. But there's no evidence.
I don't really have a lot to add to what Art said, as you both back.
Okay, let's do this. So I think we have 9 people here. Well, 8. Let's kick off with these 8, and we'll go back and forth. Okay. So, shoot their questions, please. Go ahead.
Thank you for letting us. What I think will be the future of this generation, especially most of us going into politics, journalists, reporters. What do you say for us in this divided political landscape to hold political leaders, especially presidents, accountable, especially when things are going to be obviously changing as flux, as you said before?
Just go ahead. Dive in and do it. Nothing different about this generation than previous generation. It's your power. Use them. Vote somebody in, vote somebody out. My team didn't like Joe Biden, they voted him out. Pressure on me dropped out with the debate. So it's all our Chenko and Kamala Harris. And I think it's finally up to the people of this country, Charlie and ask of the country, use your power, use your voice.
Oh, I meant like, how do we as reporters or people in office or going into office, how do we hold leaders accountable? Just like
expose it, write about it, read it, and if it's done right, done well, done accurately, people will tend to agree with what you're saying. Yeah. The critical things are democracy, number one, so we have now prominent
There's which group each recently. So we don't have a rule law anymore. We just have a rule of Trump. That is how it works. The other thing is room worship, checks and balances. Like all the they all is the math. Right now, I'm seated a lot here. Tap what we usually again. They're how siblings have some terror words. So people have to do it. You have to be informed the best you can. It's harder now than it was 30 years ago, which is counterintuitive. There's more information available than there was 30 years ago. But there's two ways. Misleading information is that, but being as up to date on things and make sure. And if you're in political office, that's what you're going to do. Get first, second, and third most important things are facts, facts, facts. Get the facts. After you get the facts, figure out how to do the facts. Get the facts. Thank you.
Hi. So I had a question really more so on what you said about Southern Nigerians. I read that little in which you said that grammatical takes the television and how it's not really worse and how the lead. So that's it. My question is also towards others with just one, but it's basically actually going on as well, such as Israel Palestinian conflicts, in which Biden had released, which president has really tried more to presence, in which Palestinians are actually being murdered as well, and like historical said, yes, the Palestinians are actually reaping the consequences a lot more. And also in places like China, where the Bible scholars still actively in drill, still being like that. So how exactly is it that it's okay for President to have involvement in one area, but not involving others, can be involved on the opposite side where actuals are giving out of the industry. So how would that seem to appear with that? And then other things as well, such as Syria and his actions, military purchase or not right now, how is that really going to say that it's okay for your resident or you're that's like a song like dismissed because it's saying, oh, isn't such a there, not such a there. How you kind of like that, say, oh, he can, but it's like she's just opposite such outbreaks as opposed to others and precarious select.
Yeah. So one of Trump's tactics is to use cluster and threat to accomplish that, and he's been largely successful doing that. It's a different way of communicating with American presidents. Most American presidents are much more diplomatic. And I've sat around for 24 years and watched presidents politely call on NATO to spend more money. It never listens to any of those three presidents. When Bush or Obama, he politely asked. Trump comes in like, all on the China shop. Says, you haven't paid your dues. That NATO to spend more money. Thank goodness. NATO needs it. That's how we stand up to Russia. So this style is different than this full of bluster, but it gets a lot better results than the habits. Case Nigeria and vis-a-vis Israel, what I would say to you is in Nigeria, it was killing people because of their religion. In Israel and Gaza, Jews were killed in October of 2023 because of their religion. And then, after the war was started by Hamas, Israel counterattacked. And wars always want to have civilian casualties. Hamas and not launched the war, none of this would have happened. Israel has a right to defend herself. Gaza is a very tightly packed urban area where hospitals, schools, mosques was diverted to military uses, and Hamas uses its civilian population to shields. And so the civilian casualties, unfortunately, took place. Nobody wanted it to. But if Hamas had attacked Israel, none of that would have been happening again.
One of my brothers, his wife always reminded people of their church. And they always worked part of the requirements. God wants everyone to go inside. Right? Everybody, it doesn't matter if you're white, if you're black, and if you're yellow. There's a title, say, treating the even the problem right now on foreign policy. It's why we shouldn't from his back. So it's when the president comment about Nigeria, all accounts was based on a constant order to assuming to sack something as a state part of the religion. Outstatement because of what he's right. The president, you might remember this, when he met with the president of South Africa, he was the watchers. crossing. If they're talking about the City in South Africa, Jolie Sykes, keep the Bruley's carcass to white sap. We'll read up. And that's what applies. Right away. The body there goes from the different country. That's not going to cannot be trapped to consider having the person in. Lots of mistakes were made as sometimes it was too slow. There was a process to see the bags. So that it's not embarrassing to the president of South Africa with something. Now I look at our refugee courts, right? Yeah, God bless everyone, no exceptions. All of a sudden, people of color, we used to have machines go down. There is one group, only one, that has special protection now. White South. Now, is it true that white South Africans being killed? Yes. So are black South Africans. So that to me is the crux of this, is how the policy based on limits, not really.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. I'm a political science major and my name is Brianna. And on the topic of immigration, we see immigration being handled under Donald Trump with ICE and secure borders. What would a bipartisan effort to mediate both a Democratic and a Republican view on immigration, what type of effort would it be for bipartisanship for that type of issue?
But we actually have real life examples of that, right? The 2013, the Senate, they got more than 6 to 7 votes for bipartisan comprehensive immigration. And the House wouldn't take those. House Republican covered, but they had it looked out. It was 3 years ago, so it was 2 years ago, it was before the election. Jim Langford, one of the most conservative Republicans, that spearheaded effort for bipartisan negotiations. You reach a comprehensive agreement on immigration, and they did it. They reached it. Donald Trump, the running that did say don't take it out, so they dropped it. This is a solvable issue. Most issues in government, this is why I love government. Okay, they're hard, but they're solid. They even sit in a room with circles. That's what was so frustrating. You talked before about the government shutdown. You had Chuck Schumer, Jeffries, desperate to talk to someone to know what we're talking with. If you get a room, you face, you could look at that's happened twice, and both sides was killed. It tells me he's an absolute guy.
Thank you so much.
Well, my boss, George Bush, was probably the one who was also known to kind of push a bipartisan immigration reform, and that he was unsuccessful. The votes just weren't there. The problem has always been that the Democrats did not want to support sufficient enforcement, and Republicans didn't want to support anything that could be accused of amnesty. And I think President Trump has shown that you don't need legislation to stop illegal immigration into the United States. But there was a time when everybody thought you had to have more judges, you had to have more enforcement officials. That's not the case. What you had to do is send a message that you're not going to get it. If you try, you're not getting it. When the Democrats, at the presidential debate, were asked, would you decriminalize people coming up the border illegally, every single Democrat raised their hand, which sent a signal to millions of people, come on in. I think we're going to be able to get away with it. And the Democrats didn't try to stop it. Getting it. Trump shut it down virtually overnight with no legislation. Now that people are really not coming here illegal anymore, I would love to see comprehensive immigration with one cheats. I would love to find a way on where we could tell people, been here a long time, they're paying with taxes for work, basically doing everything you're supposed to do, that your grandfather, you don't have to worry about being thrown out of the country anymore. You can never become a citizen because you did come here illegal. And you need to come here legally in order to become a citizen. Where do you draw that line? Where do you say somebody who came here a week ago should be deported? Somebody who came here a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, should not. And so that's going to be the crux of that matter, but that's also what compromise eventually gets down to. And I'd also support them going to the wall, because there'll come a time when there's another president in office. And you don't want to have the border opening. You have the millions of people that come in, so we do this again, then go through these same issues. We have to have enforceable borders, but I would like to see compromise struck so that people can have peace of mind. exactly who those people are, be the most difficult are.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my go understand mine's question for towards the definitely shut down me just the last couple of elections that we've had here. I've Googled these and things of New York and New Jersey all went to and building the last election. And Allegheny County, that you referred to, like the Schiliro, it went 60%, so about for lives. So the college can you really say influence the that the shutdown, the influence the opinion of people in those areas?
So I think it's a great question. And I'll say a couple of different things. You look at who in an electorate, how much do you live by it? Right. So if I'm looking at 2025, apples to apples, 2025 to 2021, Abigail Spamberger had bigger margins than the Democrats did back in 2020. Same thing with functions. That's why I think the Dow Fowler reasoning is so important. Find things there that are substantively important, but not, they don't get a whole lot of attention, right? So why do you, I think the shutdown, I'm going to tell you something that is not factually cloudy. It's just my question. Okay. I think the construction of these groups had a bigger impact in the elections than a shutdown. Shutdown's a complicated. Why is it shut down? We shut it down. It's the Republicans, the Democrats. What the heck are they talking about? The healthcare isn't fit. When I think about the each one's definition, after the president said he was going to touch his right to quota, I think that has the ability to terrorist attack and trying to the country to see third of the White House blow up in the years. So that if a previous one I was Barack Obama came in and he without that just tore down the east with what the trauma of the country. I think there was this right infection there, touch to the face that we don't quite understand yet. But I think that at least got them this touch in it. And I stress, that's just my opinion. You never have a factual basis for it. That's just an opinion. No, but else.
Thank you for taking my questions.
Yeah.
It has to do with Project 2025. You're all familiar with it. And I don't understand your security about Donald Trump not being the dictator they promised to be. They are actively, as we speak, undermining the Constitution. The checks and balances aren't there anymore. The Supreme Court is his. Why aren't you more afraid? And how afraid are you?
We're going to differ on this. I would no more say that the Supreme Court is his than I would say the Warren Court was theirs. They're ours. They're ours based on how our Constitution works. The presidents get the power to appoint, the Senate has to comply. That's the rule of law. If it was followed, if it was done. If it was started by Mitch McConnell holding one seat open for a year, you can argue with that one. I think that's a legitimate argument to have. But is that not the rule of law, or is that clever majority leader using the legitimate powers he has? If the Democrats abolish the filibuster, as President Obama has said they must, as the Democrats have promised they will, and then they make the District of Columbia a state, is that wrong? Or is that using the legitimate powers you have? I would argue it's wrong, but they have the votes, they have the votes. So, the Supreme Court is ours, properly so, the way the rules and the law of the land works. Donald Trump left office after absolutely inappropriate January 6th with the riot at the Capitol. He left on January 19th. I just think he is having the biggest, best time of his life, acting as if he's going to be there for a third term. He knows that upsets his opponent so much, and he'll take your sights off the real ball, which should be the economy, which should be the other issues that you should fight him on if you differ, because that's how you win elections. But if the fight is over this, if the fight is over the bordering, which I totally disagree with Phil, and I know that when the next Democratic president is there, Bill is going to be one of the happiest people in that world. It's a beautiful that's going to be. It's for the future. So, yes, Trump likes to put his name on buildings and do things like that. That's who he is. Every president is like that. It doesn't make him unconstitutional. It doesn't make me think that means he's going to stay in office. I mean, physically tell me how that works. How on January 21st does he stay? I give up we can No, I reached the but we start get to do that. I appreciate someone still I mean we'll take the second part of our class, but thank you. In terms of how concerned applied with home. There used to be a professor at Army reaching altitude to biology botany class, and he had students come in. What he would do is give them that fish. And he'd tell them have to study the fish. Study the fish. And after 6 hours, they'd go to that. And he'd say, now study the fish. And he'd make them do it for 3 weeks. At the end of training aids, they need the specific. Go, well, what's it? This level. It's granular. So what concerns me sometimes is the crime that my art takes going on. I try to do collect I'll give you an example. There was a trial in D.C. last week about the former Air Force veteran who threw his sandwich. And I cost him right? That's fine. But take beneath. What were the words used in that tribe? Dave, chief hero, who was in charge, said that he threw the sandwich at point blank. We use that phrase very specific times. The agent testified it exploded. I was kept these were the words these. White blank range. I'm concerned. They tried to do a felony conviction. They didn't misdemeanor. He never should have chosen. There shouldn't be any confusion. This is the high salary. You don't throw sandwiches at people. You don't throw rocks at people. Those. She's ought not as done. Then we have people in charge using language that is different from what happens. Okay, so I contrast that to the language used after January 6th, to where the President of the United States said it was a peaceful demonstration. We're leading Republicans said it was a normal torture. Look at the video of Officer Hodges being crushed by Bob Keith Hubble when he's trying to protect Alice democracy, Congress, senators, and he's in a door being crushed as they're yelling. Look at that video. Look at the video of people yelling, hang Mike Pence heads as they're building a gallows, right? Look at the video of Josh Hawley into an action. That seems to be normal tourist thing. Okay, Ari and I both worked in the Capitol. We know what happens there. And then you have a blanket heartage everything. So I'm a true believer, as I said before, I'm sorry to be redundant, in the rule of law and the equal system of justice. Justice should be blind. Just because you're my friend doesn't mean you get a permanent, right? You're George Santos. You're convicted. You don't deserve a pardon just because you're a Republican and you like to, right? You're James Comey. You're a Republican. Just because you did something the president doesn't like, and he says he's going to do retribution, and he tells the person in charge in that office to prosecute him, and he says we can't. The evidence isn't there, and then you fire him and bring someone in and say you have to do that. That's what concerns me, is we have a system. I already talked about it before. It's our Constitution. Our Constitution is to stop people. The question before, I don't see the woman who asked it about what do we do? This is where everybody has a role, whether you're Republican or Democrat. The role is whether it works for you or against you. Follow the Constitution. I propose that we have this form again on January 21st, 2029. And we'll get the answer to this question. And that's why I sleep well.
Actually, would you vote the club to this country? Okay, thank you. I will apologize that we can't be following us. But, all right. Oh, wow. That was it. Okay, we have 10 minutes here. We will do as many as we can. Let's read that.
Well, I'm ready to look your name. All right, so I'm a Kajal again. I'm so proud to meet you. And
Those two go together.
oh yes, you touched about this earlier. But as a little more background, species what I may not know. Nestle announced last week that she conceded it's already by 2027, and yesterday, last night, that sponsor announced that he will change for the more work that day. And as it's consecutive estimates, but as a very old guys, how do you look at that? Let me mistake.
Questions for Phil, right?
They're like, we will think about how the new generation is coming up and what might be the reaction from the old guard and something that was better respect. Such as the debate of these lifestyle. So, Donnie plays, he loves hearing it talk about true as ideas and what else.
I'm all for this. I love it. And it was a response to the question earlier about what can you do? What's wrong with us? And it's maybe time for an entirely new, younger generation to come in. That's exactly how the should work. You got the votes. Beat the long-term income. Well, I am getting the biggest kick out of the fact that, 2 weeks after the No Kings protest, we sure now have a lot of princes and princesses who want to run. We've got a Kennedy Jr. who wants to run in New York. We've got Pelosi Jr. who might want to run in California. We have another Shaheen who's got to run in New Hampshire. Another Angus King who's running in New Hampshire. So we don't have kings, but we sure do have the children and the grandchildren of those incumbents now who want to keep their family seats. It just strikes me as interesting. The Democrats don't want that. Then the people who are looking like they're leading these races in the primaries are the children and grandchildren of their famous character grandfather.
I'm going to try to give you a quick answer. I said this in an earlier session today. In 1960, John Kennedy, when he was running for state president, talked about passing the torch to a new generation of Americans. It was time for a change. Right here in Long Island, in 1974, Tom Downey got elected. On election day, he was 24 years old. He makes Mondami look like an old man. He got sworn in. You have to be 25, but in time he was sworn in, he was 25. Usually, they write a great photo of him on election day, them shooting masked into his house on a hooch in his drive-through, and he looks like he's 12 years old. Right? That's, again, when I talk about the rule of law being the architecture, the lifeblood is people saying, yes, sure. The thing that I like is when people come in and they understand how hard it is and they're willing to take the challenge. Again, I don't care if they're down out to just come in, participate in the process, all right? It's not easy. I mentioned my brother before. He was in public office. He was a supervisor in his town. It wasn't glamorous work. Tough people coming in and saying, oh, you're great. Somebody has to do those jobs, whether it's that, whether it's being a Congress or senator. So I'm for it. There are older people on both sides. Brando, we talked about this earlier. Chuck Grassley's the oldest member in the House and Senate in the Republican trial. He's 92. I think he wants to run again. What did I do, Chuck? So you have members in their late 80s, both sides, and you have dying political candidates. So it happens. I keep reading. I free what other thing you read that Donald Trump Jr. wants to be president. Wait. I don't know the stat that he has. Whatever it is, anybody that wants to participate on it.
We have 4 students left, with all respect to our external advisor, Bill Borough. How to do these two students were here waiting on for something to do 1, 2, 3, 4. In the interest of time, maybe direct your question to one of our speakers if you don't mind. Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, of course. Anthony from Phillips was a major. My question is more towards this Schiliro. So during this past election, we saw with these Zoran Hamdani winning New York City and his base mostly being a progressive democratic socialist campaign that and a lot more people challenging and primary Democrats now that are of the establishment, the old guard. So do you think that moving more progressive is the answer for Democrats, or and do you think people like Zoran are the future of the Democratic Party?
I think ideas are the most important thing, and ideas are different in different parts of the country. So I don't think just because he was successful in New York, that should be the play to look at press followers. I think maybe should go with all ideas authentic to them. Even if it's on the Democratic Party or both points you disagree with the party. I think that's fine. I think that makes the system better. The legislation I watched out during the years always was better But we could sit down with people who thought differently, and we'd work on section. We'd figure out what's the thing that helps us accomplish our goal the most. But the thing I'm excited about, Dan, is the excitement he generates. Now it has to be safe. Thank you.
Hi, my question is kind of so Fleischer. I was wondering what your thoughts were on the expiration day of the civil tariffs, and especially since many of us found it to be a fundamental misunderstanding of international trade, and now even we're seeing the Supreme Court hold arguments that many justices are skeptical about whether or not he would have the power to figure deal out or impose these tariffs. So I should come everyone in that.
Yes. Well done. Really smart question. I think it's a giant roll of the dice Trump is doing. Previous presidents have also enacted tariff policies against other nations. President Biden kept President Trump's tariffs against China in place. President Bush enacted tariffs against the whole world to protect Pennsylvania steel industry. But the economic arguments are classic arguments that Trump, that they may still be valid. The issue, and here's where I get to Trump stop, is if you believe the United States is being taken advantage of by other nations around the world, if you believe that China was dumping products in the United States, if you believe other nations have subsidized governmental industries that have an advantage over American private sector industries, then there's only one way to level that playing field, and that's through the use of tariffs. Presidents have two authorities to issue tariffs, one of which I think the Supreme Court is going to hold a portion of Trump's tariffs. We've gone under that authority without getting into details. Other ones are the ones that are a little more problematic. But President Trump is really using them as a tool of American foreign policy, and I think for the better part. So I'm hoping the court does not strike it down. I'm hoping that it becomes part of the lever and negotiating tool that he has to get a more fair, level playing field around the world. But it is a roll of the dice because it does come at somewhat of an inflationary cost. And I think it's impossible to argue that other was it long-term be worth it because it makes for a better balanced trade around the United States. That's the roll of the dice. I hope it's successful.
Thank you.
I want you to ask your question. We'll kind of
Hi, my name is Hofstra. I'm a political science major. Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm also a political science major. And this is like both of our questions. So this is kind of going back to some of the...
It's like a radio show.
This is going back to what someone else said. Either you can answer. It's going back to like why and how we assert ourselves into other wars. And I, like you guys said the thing about Nigeria, whether or not like, and it's anyone's belief or opinion of whether or not the war in Palestine started on October 6th or not, it is still currently going on, whether or not there's a ceasefire. We have the social media, we have the media to see imagery live and what's going on in day-to-day lives. And there's footages of kids, children, people being killed for completely innocent when there's supposed to be a ceasefire. And in Sudan, there's satellite images where you can see the blood of those killed on the ground from the satellite images. And I don't know enough about what's going on in Congo to give you an exact example, but I know there's something going on there too. So what gives like our administration the right to fund certain countries for a war, which I believe are genocides, but for funding those wars and not inserting themselves into others and to protect those people instead?
And that's a big question. It's an important one. I don't know if you should give a short answer.
Well, I think I addressed it from my point of view in response to the previous question. It's not going to change. That is my view of what happened and why it happened. I don't know enough about Sudan or Congo as this can answer.
What's happening over in college town? It's hard to cry. They're not countries can pay a lot of things. Stage. That's down. So the thing that's there is real. The Americans and shit. Our foreign policy is there to keep them close to birth. Right? So I thought, I'd be tears. The thing now is it's just not. Get going just the way white told it. Sarah said it's what he feels like that with the fault is good. So that's kind of problem out of them. But because the ideal of the Senate would be doing its job the center part for us living, something was headed, was used, asserting itself. Some underneath was starting to see that, and everything just goes to the next level.
Thank you.
Please join me in thanking our students for their Thank you. We look forward to continuing this conversation when they return in the spring, and I believe we're planning January 29 afterwards.